What's on your driving record? What is it about your driving record and how can it impact you? First of all, I want to bring up that driving is dangerous. And most of us know that, even though we go about our days and we don't think a whole lot about going place to place. Driving is dangerous. And we've seen that really play out in the last couple of years. This is the number of auto claims the trust has experienced over the years. And as you can see, we were really pretty flat for years and years. We would be right around 397 claims, plus or minus, just a few. And then in 2020, something happened. Our brains fell out of our heads. And 2021 was even worse than that. And this was not just a trust phenomenon. This was a Utah phenomenon as well as a nationwide phenomenon. And it was not just crashes, but it was also fatalities went through the roof. Now, fortunately, we didn't have any fatalities in our pool during those 2 years, but around the country, we saw really significant increases in the number of fatalities. And so driving is dangerous. Oh, but before I wrap that part up, how are we doing this year? We can see on there, as of last Friday, when I put this slide together, we had 365 claims. So we're on track, if we can be really careful in the next 3 weeks, to round out the year right about that 397 claims. And that'd be our goals, to keep it under 400 claims, get it back down to a little more sane number. Well, driving is dangerous, and it's not just crashes that make it dangerous. Over the years, we have spent over $20 million, $21 million on auto liability claims. And, money's money, but what does that money translate into? Well, that translates into a lot of pain and suffering, a lot of damage, a lot of downtime, a lot of just pain. And so our goal out there should be to try to minimize the amount of pain that's there, because that pain can translate into us personally. It can translate into problems with our jobs, with our work. And so that should be part of our goal. So how do we make driving safer? Well, we encourage members of the trust out there. We ensure the vast majority of the local government agencies around the state, we encourage them to have a good driver safety program, including driver qualification, which is part of what we're talking about today when it comes to your motor vehicle record. In addition to that, good driver training. We believe that training is one of those lifetime things that we want to continue to work on. We can't just take driver education when we're 15 or 16 years old and determine that we've got it all down. That's something that should be ongoing. Our fleet safety program, looking at specifically at our vehicles. How do they interact? How do we keep those safe? How do we make sure that they have safe tires and brakes and all of those things that go along with a fleet safety program? And first and foremost on all of our list is action, taking appropriate action when we see something that needs to happen. With one of our drivers not wearing their seatbelt, or they're speeding, or whatever it may be, taking the appropriate action. So some of you out there at this point in the presentation are saying, hey, this was supposed to be about my driving record. What the heck are you talking about all of this stuff for? Well, I think I think those things are a really good segue into our own driving records, because our driving records translate into challenges for us. So what does your driving record have to do with anything? Really, how does that impact anything? Well, your driving record impacts your safety. It impacts your family. It impacts your bottom line, your pocketbook, the money that you have, and it may impact your job, your ability to make a living, particularly if you're a professional driver. But even beyond that, it can have some major impacts on your career if you have problems with your driving record. And so that's part of the reason we decided to tackle this subject today in today's webinar. So what does your driving record include? What kind of information is on your driving record, and who's looking at it? Who's it available to? Well, your driving record tells whether you have a valid driver's license. That's a pretty important thing if you're driving for whatever reason, but particularly if you're driving for your job. Is the license that you have appropriate for your job? Do you have the type of license and the endorsements that are necessary if you have a commercial driving license, a CDL? Do you have any violations on your record, any citations, or any of those serious? What do the points mean that are on your driving record? All these things are part of what your driving record is, including accidents. What does that mean? What does that mean about you? Well, when I talk about who is this available to, if you purchase auto insurance, liability, or other types of insurance, you provide your driver's license number to your insurer, your agent. And what do they do with that? Well, they're going to take a look at your driving record and determine what kind of risk you are. That has a direct impact on the premium that you pay for your insurance. And the same thing goes when it comes to the trust. We insure your agency out there for what their operations are, the number of vehicles that they have there. So we also require that our members give us their driver's license number. That goes into underwriting, right? We look at the risk that you are placing on your organization, and then take appropriate steps from there. And then we also do some other things with that data, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Well, your driving record really indicates how likely you are to have an accident. The type of violations that you've had, the citations, if you've had previous accidents, those feed into that. So let's look at that just quickly. If I've had a prior at-fault accident, how much more likely am I to have another accident? Well, here's the answer. If I've had one prior accident at fault, I'm 63% more likely to have another one. If I have two, that more than doubles. It goes up to 150%. And if I've had three prior at-fault accidents, I'm 200% more likely to have another accident. Well, what does that mean from an insurance standpoint? Well, that means you're going to pay more premium because you're more likely to have an accident. What does that mean from a work standpoint? Well, you're probably going to have some more scrutiny of your driving behavior, and you might need to do some additional training. All right, what if you've had violations? What if you've got citations on your record? What does that mean? Well, statistically speaking, if you have had one citation on your record in the past 3 years, you're 49% more likely to have a crash, an accident. And that almost doubles if you go to two. If you got 3 citations, I'm 118% more likely to have an accident. And up to 6, I'm over 200% more likely to have an accident if I've got a violation. Well, these are just the statistics. What does that translate to? Well, it translates to more money. It's going to cost more money for you personally to buy insurance. It also will translate into your personal life and your ability to do your job. All right. So how do we make our driving better using our MVRs? Well, knowledge is power. I think when we have information, that can help us do better things. Like I said, all of us continually should be learning. This is part of part of what makes us good people, is if we learn and we get better as we go along. Well, let's take a look briefly at what the trust does with our motor vehicle record program. Like I said, we as an organization have a requirement when you have auto insurance with the trust, your organization, you need to provide driver's license numbers for all of your drivers. What do we do with that information? Part of that goes into underwriting, but additionally with that, we do a monitoring program. That's our MVR program. We send out once a month a report to employers, to the members of the trust, and that has information about you on it. And me, I'm in the program, Mike's in the program. It has information about your license status, your points on your record, any violations you have, and what specifically those violations were. What's the purpose of this program? Well, the overall purpose is to protect you as a driver, protect your employer, and protect the trust. How does it protect the trust? Well, if we reduce accidents, if we have good, safe drivers there, overall, the trust is going to perform better. We're going to have fewer losses. Remember that 397 claims that we have there? If we get that down, what does that mean to the trust? Well, the trust performs better, but that translates to every one of our local government agencies paying lower premiums and them performing better. Well, let's go back to you. How does this program benefit you? Well, number one, you're able to know if your license is valid. Now, you may say, well, I know my license is valid. I've got it in my pocket, and it says it doesn't expire until 2030 or whatever they extended the dates on that. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean your license is valid. Sometimes licenses expire. Sometimes they're denied or disqualified, particularly when we're dealing with CDL licenses. Those can be easily denied by the driver's license division, and that means you're driving without a valid driver's license. And those can be for simple things. If you fail to pay a fee, or if your medical card expires or has some sort of a problem, the driver's license division will just deny your license. And then you're out there driving without a valid license. So once a month, we send out a report, and it has a watch list on it, and it will identify anybody that has a problem with their license. Well, that's where it helps you. So you make sure that you keep your license valid. Now, as we look on here, there may be a code on there: valid, canceled, denied, disqualified, revoked, or suspended. These are some pretty negative words mostly on there. But it gives us an idea of where you stand. Well, if you don't have a valid driver's license, guess what? You shouldn't be out there driving. And that's our encouragement to our members, is when they know this, they talk to the driver, you, and say, you need to take care of this before you can continue to do your work driving for our organization. Most of the times, these can be taken care of with a phone call or a visit to the driver's license division, and you can get that license back up and running. All right, let's see. How about violations on your record? What does that mean? Do you have violations on your record? And what does that mean to your overall, your personal insurance? And also, what does that mean to you in doing your job as a driver, whether you're a professional driver or if you're just occasionally you'll do some errands for the organization that you work for? Well, I'll ask you a question. What percentage of Utah local government agency drivers have something on their record of citation or a violation in the last 3 years? That's the length of time that your MVR shows on this report, unless it's a drug or alcohol conviction, and those go back 10 years. But in those 3 years, what percentage of drivers do you think will have a citation, a violation on their record? As I've asked people this question in the past, they've been pretty consistent in saying, 75% or 50% or 2/3, pretty high numbers. The reality is that only 9.7% of trust motor vehicle record drivers have anything on their record, have a citation on their record. Less than 10%. What does that mean? I always like to flip statistics on their head. That means 90.3% of our drivers out there have an absolutely pristine, perfect driving record, at least in the last 3 years. They don't have any citations on their record. What does that mean for you if you do have citations on your record? Well, that means that if you've got one citation on your record, you're in pretty small number as well, about 8%. 2 violations, you're just barely over 1%. And if you have more than that, you're in that really minuscule group of people that have a lot of violations. We got one driver out there that has 7 violations on their record in the last 3 years, and 2 that have 6 violations. They're definitely people that we want to keep an eye on and see that they're doing what they need to do to improve their driving behavior. All right, what about points? In Utah, we have a point system, and if you get sufficient number of points on your record, then you'll actually have your license suspended for a period of time before you can get that back. Well, how do you get points? You get points by getting citations or violations on your record. And here's a list of what those may be. This is just a selection of a few of those. There are obviously lots of other moving violations out there that could be on here. But for serious ones like reckless driving or speeding over 21 miles per hour over, there's 75 or 80 points, real high number of points there. Average speeding ticket, 1 to 10 miles per hour, is about 35 points, but most other moving violations are about 50 points. What does that mean in the grand scheme of things? It doesn't mean a lot as compared to the trust program. And we'll talk to you about that in just a minute. If you get in trouble with the state system where your license is in jeopardy, we've probably already had a discussion with you about your driving long before that point, or had a discussion with your employer. Hey, this person has really got a lot of violations on their record. Okay. So let's take a look at how you could lose your license or have it suspended based on the points that you have. If you are over 21 years of age, you need to exceed 200 points to have your license suspended. And it'll be suspended for 3 to 12 months from that point. Depending on what it is, it could actually be revoked. If you're under 21 years of age, you are at a little bit higher bar. You only have to get 70 points. If you get one speeding for excessive speed or a reckless driving citation, you can lose your license with 1 citation. So 70 points on that. Now those points will go down over time. If you don't have any other moving violations, they'll drop off at a rate of 50% of the points per year. So 50% the first year, and the rest of those will go off after the second year. However, if you have another violation, those points are going to hang around, but all of your points will drop off after they've been on there for 3 years. Okay. We don't worry too much about points. We look more at the overall driving record. If you have citations, those are risks to you and to your organization. So here's a redacted report showing this is what your employer gets on a monthly basis. Gives a list of drivers, and it'll say in there what percentage of your drivers have a violation on their record. So with this organization that we're seeing here, they only have 6.9% of their drivers having violations, compared to the 9.7% of trust drivers, overall trust drivers. Now, I've seen some organizations that have had up to 50% of their drivers or even more have something on their records. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of how's your organization performing. Also might give you a little bit of an idea about how the law enforcement officers are writing citations in your neighborhood. Other things that we see on there is the watch list. At the top of the report each month, there'll be a list, and there'll be a group of drivers, hopefully none, but occasionally there will be a group of drivers there that have a status code that says why they're on the watch list. Some of these are for, well, you can see there's some that say moved. Well, what does that code mean? It means that they don't live in Utah, either anymore or ever. We have, sometimes people move away, but sometimes we have employees who work outside of the state of Utah. They live, they live close to the border, and they go to work for a local government agency in Utah along the border. Well, this list that the monitoring that we do only covers the state of Utah. We have direct access to the driver's license division here in the state, but we don't with other states. And so we encourage our members to have those drivers that are living out of state to provide a motor vehicle record to them at least once per year. And most states will have free access to one time a year for that. So then we're able to check that. Now we do a little more than that in the state of Utah. They get a monthly, almost real time review information on all of the drivers. Okay. Other codes that we see on there, there's one that says EXPR. That means it's expired. We didn't renew it in time. There's another one there, DMed. That means it's denied because of medical. And if you look up above, I got an arrow there. There's a legend that will show us what those different codes mean. If it's denied medical, that's something to deal with a CDL license, and the person hasn't kept their medical card up to date, or there's some problem with their medical card. And so this is a great place for your organizations to look each month. Where do we have any problems? Now, what information is there? This is redacted, of course, so we don't have names on there, but there'll be a name and the last 4 digits of their driver's license number, so we can really identify who they are without exposing any personal identifiable information. But this is a handy tool for our agencies to take a look and see where we may have some challenges. And then everybody else's license is shown there if they're valid and the number of points that they have. And then there's an additional report that shows what citations are on their record. All right. What happens at that point? Well, we encourage members of the trust to do driver qualification, to have a policy that says this is what is acceptable or this is what is required to drive for our organization. Driving is serious business. Driving is a privilege that we receive. That's why we have a driver's license there. It's not just a right that I can go out and drive. So with that driver qualification program, we recommend license verification, that they go in and keep track and make sure that they have the appropriate license for the type of driving that they're doing. And if it's a CDL, that may mean that they have additional endorsements. Sorry, I lost the word for a second. Endorsements, and it's the right license for the job. Look at their accident history and evaluate their motor vehicle record for their violations. And then take it and put it onto a matrix and say the combination of accidents and violations on this person's record puts them in the green or the yellow or the red. And then we take appropriate action from there. If you're in that far right-hand side where it's all red, well, you're a high risk of having another accident and also being risk to your organization. And so we encourage our members to have a policy that says what's acceptable, what's borderline, and what's acceptable, and then take appropriate action there. Are there some people that we say this person should not be driving? And the answer is yes. If you've got a couple of fresh DUI convictions, or even one that's fresh, that puts you in that really risky category. If you have, we saw that one person on there that had 7 citations in the last 3 years. Well, that's in that unacceptable category. Pretty much, if we're exceeding in the aggregate 3 either citations or accidents in that 3-year period, then that person is in that really risky category, right? If they're beyond that, then that may be an unacceptable driving record. All right, on to the next one. So how does this benefit you and your employer? Well, it allows you to be able to control your risk. Once again, and knowledge is power. What are the risks to me? And now if you have some citations on your record, violations there, that's going to be an impact to you. So we can work on that. We can do better. Hey, I got a problem with speeding, and so I need to work on that, because that could impact my ability to work, my ability to drive, or simply it's going to cost me a lot more in my personal insurance to continue to drive with these violations on my record. So knowledge is power for you and me and all of us out there. Make sure our license is valid. If you're a professional driver, that's one of those key things that you have is your driver's license. Identify training needs. If somebody's had accidents or if they've had citations, they probably need some additional training. And it also gives us an opportunity to motivate drivers to do better. Over the years, we've gone from originally of the drivers that we had about 19%, over 19% of our drivers had a citation on their record. Now we're down below 10%. So we've cut it about in half over the years, and we think we can continue to get better. When people know that having a safe record is as a responsibility for them in their occupation, they do better. And we've seen that play out over the years. We have about 16,000 drivers out there, and of that, less than 10% have something on their record. So training programs, our recommendation is that you do defensive driving training with all of your drivers at least every other year. We just finished up our regional training. We do that every year. We go around the state. We also have multiple online resources for you to do that training as well. We have if you have drivers that have had an accident or in moderate risk or higher risk, they should be getting a defensive driving training as soon as possible. Additionally, we encourage you, for those people in public safety, to do an annual emergency vehicle operations training. So that's for public safety, law enforcement, fire, EMS, those type of agencies that may be running code or lights and sirens. Let's see. Driver coaching. It is an obligation of a supervisor. If you see something, you need to say something. If they're having issues with their driving, they're speeding, or you see them driving recklessly, you need to take action. So just make a commitment to that we're going to reduce the number of accidents, and we're not going to kill anybody out there. So we're going to take action when that happens. Some of our members out there will do ride-alongs or have videoed, some of our transit organizations have videos in the buses, and they'll go through and review the video footage of the driving and discuss how the driver can do better. This is a good, positive way to reinforce good behavior and outline behaviors that are not as good, and come up with ways that we can improve those. Telematics are another way that you can really give constant coaching to drivers. If you're having hard brakes or speeding or whatever it is, telematics can give you an instant update on that and say, hey, slow down. All right. So how do we deal with this? Be intentional about your MVR. This is like a credit score. This is something that your driving record is incredibly important in your career. If you never drive, it may not be as much, but if driving is part of your job, your MVR is critical. Be intentional about your safety. Work hard to get better and safer as you're out there on the road, and just be aware of the risks around you. Know what your history is, and drive your future. You have control of your record, and you can make that, and you can control that and make it better, and save yourself money and keep your family safe as you go along. All right, those were a lot of words, Mike. That wraps up the material there. If you've got any questions or comments, please type those into the chat box, and we'll answer those now. Any thoughts, Mike?
No, that was great. I mean, it's just super important to know not only what, the reason why things are on your record is, and then the steps we can take to not have those things on our record, right? Yeah. And so this goes perfect with our defensive driving training that we just did. really ties it up all nice in a cute little box for us.
All right. And we like things in cute little boxes this time of year as well.
Yeah, we do.
Put a bow on it. Do we have any questions?
No questions right now.
All right. Well, I've gone just a little over my time. Apologize for that, but there was a lot of material on this. We think it's important for us as organizations, but especially as individuals as well. This is that credit score for our driving, and it's important stuff. That'll wrap it up for this session. We're going to be coming back in a little less than a half an hour and talking about liability waivers and what value those are. So if you've signed up, we'll see you in that amount of time. If you haven't signed up, go to utahtrust.gov and click on training and events, and we'll get you signed up there. Folks, thank you so much for all of your efforts out there in keeping Utah a safe place and in making it safer. Please go out and have a safe day.
Thanks, everyone.